Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another episode of Europa Universalis 4 Tour du Monde, where I am touring the world and checking out the different types of countries that you might want to play with. So we are continuing to head ever so closer to Europe, but we are making a pit stop in the Middle East proper, and we're going to start off by looking at the Mamluks. So the Mamluks are probably the largest nation in the Middle East proper, unless you count the Timurids, which is really sort of bordering the sort of subcontinent, and yeah, I don't know, I'm going to call the Mamluks really the core of the Middle East, right? So, and they're a pretty interesting nation to play in that they're quite the powerhouse. Now, curiously, they don't actually start with any casus belli on any of their neighbors, and I believe the default set of 4 missions, oh, that's not true, default set of 3 missions, first of all, it does start you off with one that would give you a claim. Protect our brethren in Massawa. And since I suck at geography, so that's down here. So this should give you a CB against Ethiopia if we pick that. In fact, just for the sake of argument, we will go ahead and do so. And then Ethiopia, yeah, we do get a conquest CB. But the Mamluks actually lend themselves relatively well to a early diplomatic start because you've got a lot of relatively friendly neighbors around. There are a couple of powerhouses to worry about, certainly in my little test games with them. The Ottomans tended to get in conflict, or vice versa, with the various nations here, and depending on what kind of alliances and marriages you might end up with, you could end up in a war against the Ottomans quite early on. And I believe they do outpace us in tech. Maybe not. It looks like they're 3-3-3 across the board, so I guess that's not it. Maybe they have slight modifiers. I don't know. It did seem... maybe it was just a decision or a leader they had that gave them an extra 10% discipline or something. But their forces seemed a little bit stronger than ours. That being said, there's one really interesting mechanic. So, first of all, there is a rather confusing tooltip here when you mouse over the cavalry. If you're playing a normal European nation, for example, it will say, you cannot have more than 50% cavalry. Here we have 80%. But a typical European nation will say, you cannot have more than 50% cavalry compared to your infantry in battle, or you will suffer the insufficient support penalty. Now, the strict reading of that would seem to indicate that if I had, for example, again, let's talk about the European side of it. If I had 6 infantry, I could have no more than 3 cavalry. The tooltip text, however, is kind of off. What it really means is you can't have more than 50% of your infantry plus cavalry be cavalry. So if you had 6 infantry, you could have up to 6 cavalry, and that would be perfectly fine. I've confirmed this with Paradox, and word is they're going to hopefully update the text before release, because it's not terribly clear right now. And when I was playing my England game, I said I like to make stacks of 6 infantry and 5 cav, because infantry tends to take some hits in battle, and it's very easy for this number to drop. And it's not based on the regiments. I say 6 and 5, but it's actually 6,000, 5,000. So it's very easy for the infantry to lose some numbers and break your 50-50 balance. So that's why I tend to offset it. Now, I did mention, however, that not everyone is the same. I believe Russia, or sorry, Muscovy, which is not pictured, starts with the ability to have 60% as being cavalry, and some hordes I think are maybe 70%, and the Mamluks actually start with 80%, which is pretty great, because cavalry is much stronger than infantry. It is... based on the combat mechanics, it ends up being more effective generally. I believe you may get that tactics bonus that reduces your losses in battle. I'm not 100% on all the combat formulas and mechanics, but basically, the more cavalry you can pack in, the stronger your troops pound for pound. Now, cavalry is a little bit more expensive to build. I believe it takes a little bit longer as well. We could actually take a look here if I go to the build screen. So my Muslim archers, for example, would be 10 gold, 58 days. My cavalry would be 25 gold, 87 days in the same province. And I'm not sure, yeah, the maintenance is more than twice as much as well. So much, much more expensive to do the cavalry. On the other hand, each regiment, whether it's an infantry regiment or a cavalry one, still uses 1,000 manpower exactly. So if you are tighter on manpower, the Cavs are going to do great. If you've got lots of manpower but you might be a little broke, you might want to fill your ranks with infantry. But frankly, I still tend to favor a relatively cavalry-heavy group. But again, here we can do 80%. So we could have 8 regiments of cavalry, and 2 units of infantry. Again, I might do that third one in there just for the extra padding. But you end up with something that makes your manpower stretch out exceptionally well. And then you can combo that with appropriate ideas. Now, I skipped out at looking at the specific ideas in some of my previous videos. I apologize for that. We're definitely going to fill in the blanks here with the Mamluks. So the ideas are tied to basically your culture. For example, I'm not sure about the Mamluk ideas, for example, but conceivably there could be more than one nation that has the Mamluk ideas. I know, for example, when you're playing as Muscovy and you turn into Russia, well, you still have the same idea group. And there's probably, for example, I'm betting these are a bunch of German ideas over here. I don't know 100% for sure, but I think there's a lot of that sort of sharing. But the Mamluks one might be relatively unique to just these guys. And it gives us 10% extra cavalry combat ability. Sorry, cavalry is better. Also, 25% more trade steering, which is really good. That has to do with, again, when we position our merchants in trade nodes, we can steer more trade in a direction we want, which is very handy. And when we have, so then there's these ideas down here. These ideas, so when you unlock administrative tech level 4, you will unlock a national idea slot. You click here, you pick any one of these. Then once you've got that selected, you can see that there are 7 levels of that. You start off at 0 levels, but then you can spend points. So for example, if we picked up aristocratic ideas, which gives us a bonus to all of our cavalry and makes it cheaper, which seems like a pretty good idea if you're playing the Mamluks. If we pick this, then every time we had 300 military power kicking around, we could unlock the next level. So picking this idea is free once we have unlocked administrative level 4. Picking the whole idea group is free, and then unlocking individual ones would cost 300 military power. This, of course, diplomatic power, administrative power. And then every time we unlock one of these ideas, these individual ideas, then it increases this bar by 1/3 of this sort of tick. So every 3 ideas, so once we got to serfdom, for example, and unlocked serfdom, then we would unlock this first Mamlukian idea, which is the Red Sea trade, which gives us an extra 5% global trade power and 10% trade range. And that continues. The ideas can be spread out. If you had one idea here, one here, one here, well, that would still unlock 3. That would be 3 in total, so it would unlock this first idea group. I think in practice, you tend to focus to finish most idea groups, especially since once you get to that last one, you unlock the last one, not only do you get the benefit of the 7th slot, you also unlock the full final light bulb here for the idea at the same time. So, you know, we're talking about considerable bonus. This one here would be considerable bonus to our cavalry, which is already going to be the focus of our military in general. So you end up with this brutal mounted force. So Red Sea trade, we've got that. Monuments to our greatness would be +1 yearly prestige, which is quite nice because some nations actually have a very hard time generating prestige. And so you're really forced to go into war quite often because winning battles gives you prestige, and also winning the war and getting concessions out of a peace deal will give you additional prestige. So being able to get things like this lets you have more control over when you might want to go to war. Purchase new Mamluks, which is 20% manpower recovery speed, which is really nice because your manpower takes 10 years to replenish. So if, for example, we went to war, we depleted our manpower completely, it would take 10 years to reach our maximum. Whatever that maximum is, whether it's 23,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 men, 10 years is how long it takes. So you get, 1/10 of that every year, or 1/12 of a tenth every month is, I believe, the way it really effectively calculates. So being able to improve that by 20%, this is actually stupendously good if you're going to be playing a warring kind of nation. 5% discipline. Discipline is bonus damage in combat, so this would be 5% extra damage in combat, and this is amazing, considering most of the time you are going up against people who are going to be relatively similar in terms of military. This is not like Civilization, where you could be, if you time your technology development right, you're going to be going in with like a unit that's 50% more powerful. No, usually they're relatively samey. Barring your dramatic leaps in sort of culture and tech groups. And so an extra 5 or 10% is actually really significant because normally, equal stacks makes a big difference. That's why terrain is so important, right? This is the equivalent of forcing a 10% discipline bonus. I think works out effectively to the same as forcing a river crossing, which is brutal. And then if you can stack those two together, it becomes really good. Reform the Fela system. It would be 20% extra production efficiency. So if we look at the economy, you can see that you get a certain amount of money from taxation, certain amount from production, certain amount from trade. So depending on how your personal economy is set up, that 20% production can really add up to a lot. And you can see, I mean, it's effectively about a third of our economy here. Now, I don't think it scales up the same way as some of the other things, just over the course of the game. But I don't know, it's pretty good. It gets a lot of multipliers as well. Reform the succession, which gives a 20% cheaper stability cost modifier. And stability cost does eat up a lot of administrative power, especially if you're playing a militaristic sort of game and you have a lot of overextension. So you have a lot of provinces that aren't cored to you yet, that dramatically increase the cost for stability. So these sorts of things are pretty handy. And then finally, monopoly ports gives us an extra 10% trade efficiency. And then, yeah, once we complete all of these ideas, then we will get an additional 25% provincial trade power modifier. So trade and conquest is really the way you're going to make quite a lot of money there, plus a little bit of production. Taxation is not a core part of the Mamlukian way. Other than that, our government, we start with an IKTA government, probably not pronouncing that right, and I apologize, which gives us 100% extra chance of getting a new heir, so you're not going to be hurting for heirs, generally speaking, which means I suppose you could afford to run in a relatively low prestige situation and not worry about dropping into personal unions too often. And you also get 33% more income from vassals. So that is going to tie into some of your decisions about how you might want to build up your empire. You might try to get more diplomatic vassals. You may not ever annex them, because annexing actually takes a lot of resources to get the relationship very high. You have to commit diplomats to the process for a very, very long time to go to annex a vassal. It's quite the undertaking. So leaving them as vassals, if you're getting a 33% bonus income, starts to become much, much more viable. And there's a lot of friendly people around who might be perfectly happy to be vassalized. In my test game, I found that it was very likely, actually. Other screens to discuss. What's the country modifier? Conquest of Jerusalem. We've got +1 missionary, +1 yearly prestige because we control the holy city of Jerusalem, which I believe is right here. Diplomacy. I suppose we could, quickly scan to see who our friends and enemies might be. Yeah, actually, a lot of our neighbors here are not particularly friendly with us, which is kind of interesting. Trade nodes. So we have Alexandria here. Now, of course, the fact that we control the province where the trade node graphic is not that significant. Now, it's likely that Alexandria creates 7.8 trade power. And if we compare it to Rashid, well, Rashid also creates 7.8 trade power. But Dumyat only creates 1.8. And 1.2. I think 1.2 is about the lowest you see. I do see a lot of 3s. Actually, around here it's all like slightly under 2. So a lot of 1.8s it looks like. Oh, here's another 7.8 over here. And this is not a trade node. Like Aden is not the trade node. Or is it? Oh, Gulf of Aden is what the trade node name is. 1.8. Why isn't it not giving me a pop-up over here? 1.8. 1.8. What was this one? What, does it not have any trade power at all? Or is it because it's too far away from our capital? Oh, and it's not giving you stats. That's interesting. So Alexandria by itself is not any more valuable than Rashid. Although, together, they will make up a relatively significant amount of your actual trade power. So it's definitely quite nice to have. So, this is the Alexandria trade node. So if you did really want to maximize how much money you could make out of here, conquering Hejaz, oh God, why do you even try? Would be a priority, right? If you want to really max out that. Other than that, your priority might be, if you're going south anyway, especially if you've got a CB against Ethiopia, you're going to start to get a huge presence in the Gulf of Aden trade node and ensure that you could, either collect money here or just shuffle more and more trade up into Alexandria and then collect it over there. Again, I'm sure there's going to be like break-even points where it becomes more advantageous to collect here as opposed to shuttle forward. But off the top of my head, like at this time, I don't know where that break-even point will be. So we'll sort of have to discover it together. Imperial map mode, not really going to be relevant to us. Religious map mode. So we've got, we are Sunni, but there are Shiite neighbors, which is going to have some great potential for holy wars. We've got Orthodox over here, which I have to admit, I was not expecting. This is even uncolonized Orthodox land. That's really interesting. A little bit of animist. And this is striped here because the country that controls us, Ethiopia, it is officially... How do I find out what its official religion is? Oh, right there. So Ethiopia is officially Orthodox. Ah, I see. But some of its provinces are Sunni. Some of them are animist, Sunni, animist. So that's why there's the stripe. It shows that there's a mismatch between the government religion and the provincial religion. So if you were to play as Ethiopia, you'd probably try to put a stop to that right away. Of course, you'd be right next to the Mamluks. So good luck with that. I'm sure that's going to work out well for you. Military, your force limit is 25, which is not that tremendously high, but again, 80% of that can be cavalry, which is going to be extraordinarily potent. Now, it's possible that many of your neighbors are going to have the same sort of modifiers. In fact, let me pop out and just check the Timurids again really, really quick. I'll also take a look at their national ideas. And then we're going to move over to the Ottomans. I'm just curious to see what the cavalry divider is over there, if it's 80 or if it's 70 or whatnot. Because obviously if all your neighbors have exactly the same benefit that you do, then it's not quite as cool. Now, one thing is I haven't been able to figure out where in the UI it explains why you have that modifier. I thought, is it part of the government? It's like, well, it's not described there, or there, or there, and it's not one of these. You know, was it the religion? Was it, like, I haven't been able to figure it out, which is really annoying. Oh yeah, I need to look at just the one over here. 100%. So as the Timurids, you can have 100, and I believe that's actually really common with all the hordes, now that I think about it. Because I'm pretty sure that that's how Johan was kick my ass as the Uzbeks, was with 100% cavalry, or very high percentage cavalry, and then like all the things that give a bonus to cavalry. It was just ludicrous. They do have a cool benefit. I believe this is all shared by the hordes, in that if you are fighting them on their territory on steppes terrain, then they get an extra 25% damage bonus, like 25% discipline, like that sort of thing, and it is gargantuan. Like, you do not fight the hordes in their own land if you can avoid it, because it is just sick. The difference. Oh, and I forgot to look at the tech group. So the Nomad tech group, their tech sucks, right? So the Nomad tech group, they're going to fall behind, and that's the thing. You can't fight the Nomads on their footing at the start of the game, because they're going to just crush you with their built-in bonuses. They're 100% cavalry, they're incredible defensive bonuses, that sort of thing. You have to rely on, especially as a European, the fact that you, especially as a Western European, or even Eastern, for example, if you're playing as Muscovy, you are going to rely on the fact that you tech at a faster pace, and at some point you will surpass them. Now, I don't know where that break-even point is. You're going to have to get quite far ahead of them in tech before you can surpass their innate benefits. I assume it's going to be something like, probably at least like 5 tech levels ahead. It's the Mamluks. I just want to check their technology. Muslim, so 50% more expensive than normal. And I think that's what I want to check. Unify Islam is owned or vassalized. It's not, interestingly enough, doesn't require it to be cored. You need to possess these provinces. They don't actually have to be cored. All owned provinces being Muslim is important, and you need a bunch of extra military or extra power of all kinds. And it costs you, well, it'll only cost you 100 of each, but gives you very cheap stability cost modifier, missionary strength, tolerance to the truth faith. I believe that when we were looking at either the Timurids or Bamanis, I think they had the same goal available. All right, so we're going to pop out of this, and we're going to check out the Ottomans, and that will bring this video to an end. Single player. It's interesting. The checksum changes every time I load the menu or not. Because sometimes it'll be like normal letters, and sometimes it'll be the 4 axes. Oh, Ottomans. I'm like, why am I looking at the Timurids? Haven't I already done the Timurids? So the Ottomans, at this point, is the quite healthy man of Europe, right? It is in pretty good shape. Its power is waxing, waning, waxing. Yes, it is getting quite strong. And in fact, if you're playing as someone like Austria, that early on your concerns are mostly political and trying to gain extra authority in the Holy Roman Empire, right? This is your imperial authority. You want to enact reforms. That tends to be your thing. But at some point, your concern becomes, how the hell do I stop the Ottoman juggernauts? As for the Ottomans, I suspect your early concern might be like, hey, why is Constantinople still purple? So yes, the Byzantine Empire still exists at the start of the game, and it has 3 whole provinces, and I'm willing to bet we have a mission to squish that. Or do we really not? City of the World's Desire. The last orders of the great prophet were send forth the warriors of the faith to bring the Romans into the house of submission. We must do what no other Ghazi has done and conquer the city in the name of the prophet. Yeah, so to succeed in here, we have to A, own Constantinople, but also Byzantium has to not exist. You have to wipe the nation completely off. So take Constantinople, but also take, I looked at the pronunciation of this at one point. Achaia, and Moria. We have to claim all of that and hope that the Byzantines don't claim anything else. In a test game as the Byzantines, I did see that I was able to grab Athens quite quickly. That being said, I don't think you're going to be overly challenged to wipe Byzantium off the map if you're playing as the Ottomans. I suspect that as a player playing as Byzantium, you can probably hold off the Ottomans with a couple of quick alliances and a little bit of luck, for example, if the AI decides to do something else other than bother you right away. Form an alliance with Kandar, achieve religious unity. Have a religious unity of at least 100%. So if we look at religion, we're actually only 52% right now. Wow, so we are Sunni. So if we go to the religious map mode, what's the problem here? Oh, this is Orthodox over here. That's the problem. Right, these are Orthodox provinces. Yeah, so you're wanting to wipe that off. And that's it. Yeah, just clear all the Orthodox stuff out of here. I bet you there's a fair deal of revolts. Not particularly powerful revolts. So let's go through some of the screens. Let's start with the military here. Force limit is 26, and we're actually quite close to that at this point. Mostly in infantry, which is really not surprising. And what is our... Yeah, see, we've got this sort of European-style 50-50 split with our cavalry. So, you know, we definitely... I would suspect... The very first thing I would do is I would build 6 cavalry, and then try to use that. I don't think I would disband any infantry. But as I claimed more territory, my force limit increased, I would go ahead and put that in. I would probably also prioritize getting an extra couple of ships, because as the Ottomans, you have a lot of coast to defend. There's a lot of room here for things to be blockaded. And this is something I have not actually explored, but I know that in EU3, if the enemy had some ships here in the Sea of Marmara, you would not be able to cross this land bridge. I suspect that is still the case here. Nothing else would particularly make sense. And controlling the Aegean means these low crossing points here as well. Naxos is, I think, independent? Yeah. Actually, hold on. What are these things? Truce. Vassal of Venice. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it is the sort of Venetian kind of purplish. No, that's green. Oh, no, it's its own color. Right, because it's just a vassal. Derpy, derpy, derp. Yeah, so let's look at the rest of the menus. So, that was military, religion, pretty standard. You only start with the one missionary, yeah. And the thing is, if you're making aggressive expansions as the Ottomans, and Ottomans do tend to be a fairly militaristic nation to play as, you may very well want to invest in the religious ideas right here, because it's actually kind of fun. You get a permanent CB against all other religious groups. You get more missionaries, which is important. You get, wow, cheaper stability. Actually, that's really quite handy. And I was going to say you get stronger missionaries, which means much, much faster conversion rates. More tolerance to the truth faith, which means less rebellion in places that would have your Sunni religion, I believe. I think acceptance of different religions. Yeah, but what about our religion? I think that's what it means. Places with your religion will be less likely to rebel from other things, right? If there's cultural differences or nationalist presence or anything like that. Again, I might be lying to you, but I think that's the case. Anyway, and while I'm talking about the missionary strength, right? where was that? Right over here. So you might be used to the EU3 system where conversion and things is like kind of a percentage chance every month or every year or whatever it is. Here it is just a straight up progression bar, and a lot of things in the game have been changed to that. So if I mouse over here, Orthodox, it would take 66 months, approximately 66 months to convert this province to Sunni. There are things that, of course, can change your missionary strength. Like if I put this out and then took the idea that gave me an extra 3 missionary strength, and that would change partway through, of course. But it is, I do like that it's kind of a fixed rate. You can check the actual progress of it, as you're going community to community, knocking on doors and saying, hey, have you heard the true word? That sort of thing. Yeah, wow, taking Constantinople would be such a high priority because, well, no, you've got a bridge here. Never mind, I was going to say, because you're split up. But yeah, controlling the sea over here is going to be so important. Let's go through the other menus. So I did look at the missions here. Unify Islam, right? Same thing. Adopt the Devshirm system. Need a ruler with military skill of at least 4 and 100 military power. Actually increases military or national revolt risk, but gives us 10% more manpower, which is significant. I would jump on this right away. Again, everywhere with your true faith, you're going to be fine because you've got so much sort of passive revolution or rebellion reduction. But, obviously the heathen belief tolerance is going to be really poor, and there's going to be a high risk of revolts. So right now in Edirne is actually popped all the way up to 7.1 because we've started to do the conversion. Let's go ahead and implement this idea here. Boom. And take a look at what this does to our revolt risk. 8.1. So it's gone up a whole percentage point, which is, yeah, I guess that's what that was. Denouncement of sect practices. We need lots of diplomatic skill to be able to pull this off. And this would actually drop national revolt risks by a whole percent. And give us piety. Okay, well, that seems like a good idea to implement. Very, very nice. Yeah, it drops it back down to 7.1. Accept cultural shift. This is if Greek is the dominant culture, and we have a stability of at least 1, and we are at peace, which we actually don't start at peace, then we can implement this and turn Greek into our primary culture. Dominant versus primary. Oh, well, that's really interesting. Yeah, right here. So our primary culture group is Turkish. We also tolerate the Greeks. And the reason that we tolerate the Greeks, if I can remember where culture is, right here. The reason we tolerate the Greeks is because there's a significant percentage of our population that is Greek. Now, if for some reason that shifted where we didn't have very many Greeks around, and I think we could start to flip this culture. We could eradicate the Greek culture if this were a Sunni province. I think even though it is accepted, we could still try to convert the culture. At some point, there would be so little Greek that it would no longer be an accepted culture. It would become a fringe culture, but it would just fall under the, non-tolerated group. And it would actually increase revolt chance. So, you've got to kind of play that by ear. But it's kind of interesting that it could flip the other way. I guess, how would we become Greek? I guess if we lost a bunch of the territory over here. Like, if we basically lost, a bunch of this stuff, then we would become dominantly Greek. Our primary culture would still be Turkish, but we might want to change at that point. I guess. I find it hard to think of a situation where you'd want to do that, though. And I don't think you can flip these to Greek. I don't think there's a mechanic for doing something like that. Curious. Very curious. Adopt the title of Khalifa. I think we've seen this before. More prestige and piety. The Ibadat Khana. Reduce revolt risk, but more stability cost. Okay. We looked at those. So the ideas. All right, so the Ottoman ideas, we start off with an extra 10% discipline. That's why the Ottomans are so tough to fight when I was doing my little test game as the Mamluks. So all their troops do 10% more damage, and that is brutal. Just sick. It takes 33% less administrative power to create cores out of provinces that we claim. That is tremendous. We start with anything on core? No, we have cores everywhere to start off with. But again, it lends itself very well to conquest, right? Conquer, make cheap cores. I like it. Then our ideas that we can unlock. 33% more religious unity. Triple manpower increase in religious wars. Wow. So interesting, our religious unity would actually go up even if we don't actually have religious unity. That's very, very interesting. And religious unity decreases your full national revolt risk, or rather, having some religious disunity increases your revolt risk and your stability cost modifier apparently. So you get it's a double whammy to have provinces of a different religion in your nation, because they have a local revolt risk and then the national stuff as well. So there's already a decent chance of some rebellions, and this is just going to get worse. There's going to be new groups too for the religious types. The Timarete system, 55% better cavalry combat ability. That is a huge, huge number. On the other hand, of course, if it's still a 50-50 split, unless this factors into that, unless this would turn into like a 65-35 split, I don't think that's what that means though, but I might be wrong. It would be interesting. I haven't explored the cavalry sort of modifiers enough yet. Decreased war wariness, hello. Tolerance of heretics and heathens goes up quite a bit. Yeah, so as long as they pay their heathen tax, and they're willing to do that. And this would effectively reduce the rebellion chance, again, as you continue to conquer things. More tax money, that's nice. More trade income, that's nice. Cheaper ships. And again, this would be a very late game thing to develop, but that would be quite helpful to help defend your coastline is going to be much, much bigger by the time that point reaches around. And if we unlock everything, 20% bonus manpower recovery speed, certainly very strong. We're in the Ottoman tech group, which is a 25% research penalty, which is not bad. I'm trying to remember. I think the Eastern tech group is 20%, so you're pretty much in line there. Westernizing is always a possibility. That can happen when you start to border Western nations. You have the option of doing that. It does drop your stability all the way to -3, which is brutal, and then blows up all your current power. So you're going to have to save up a bunch of power to be able to start to stabilize again. This is going to be a long time before you get back to stability 0. Let alone positive stability. So there's going to be a huge, huge amount of rebellion. So it's that Westernizing is always an extremely difficult choice. Trade, some trade numbers. Did we? Oh no, 3 merchants. Okay, it looked like, or sorry, 2 merchants. It looks like we almost had 3, but we do not. Economy, actually, we don't make a heck of a lot of money at this time. Luckily, our costs are currently relatively low, mostly because we're strong on infantry as opposed to cavalry. But and we do start with some war exhaustion. Again, yeah, who are we at war with to start off with? The Ottoman-Albanian War. Right over here. You really... Is it just the one province? Wow, that's going to be a short war. Good leader, though. 656? Holy cow. Who do we start with? 556. Also extraordinarily strong, a despotic monarchy. So even cheaper core creation costs. And unjustified demands, so demands we make in peace concessions that were not like cores or part of our casus belli. We take 10% less, I believe, like over aggression penalty and maybe reduced diplomatic power cost to make those deals. So that is the overview of the Ottomans. Ottomans are, of course, I think going to be a relatively popular power to play just because they're very potent but kind of interesting. You do start off isolated from the core politics of Europe, barring maybe some alliances that are going to affect what goes on over here, which is an area that we're probably going to look into in the next video. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.